Dragi prijatelji, evo još jednom se javljamo u Sidneja sa našim serijalom Razgovor s povodom, 6 sati navečer u Sidneju, 20. avgust i 10 sati u Sarajevu. Ovaj put imamo specijalnog gosta, njegovu ekscelenciju, ambasadora Velike Britanije. Sa nama ekipu čine Fahir Zečević, Ernest Kalauzović i naša ispomoć danas je Samra i u Sarajevu imamo Lea Hadžića, naš tehnički support. Normalno i ovaj put, kao i svaki put drugi, domaćin ovih naših serijala razgovora je Vijeće Bosanske zajednice iz New South Wales, Bosnian Community Council, asocijacija pojedinaca i grupa koja se bavi pitanjem Bosanaca i Hercegovaca kako u Sidneju, tako i širom svijeta, posebno u Bosni i Hercegovini. Znači, večeras imamo specijalnog gosta i ja riječ prepuštam Ernestu. Ernest, please.
Poštovani gledalci, svi koji gledate ovaj put ćemo imati emisiju u engleskom jeziku, prvenstveno zbog našeg gosta. Naš gost danas je ambasador Velike Britanije u Bosni i Hercegovini, koji je dužnost preuzeo u avgustu 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, you are live from Sydney, and we have our guest who possibly already saw on our social media is His Excellency Matthew Field, who is British Ambassador to Bosnia and Herzegovina. He was appointed to this position in August 2018, and Matthew has previously served in a number of overseas political and policy roles. Since joining diplomatic services in 2003, he was political counselor and head of political and security group in the British Embassy in Brasilia, overseeing staff and projects from 5 different government departments. In the European Union mission in Skopje, he served as political advisor to the EU special representatives, liaising with political parties and civil society. He was head of EU and political team in British Embassy in Zagreb, working on Croatia's EU accession talks. Most recently, Matthew was seconded to the EU Special Representative Office in Sarajevo as a senior advisor and head of political. Matthew has acquired out a number of responsibility in a foreign and Commonwealth offices in London, including managing the UK-Argentinian relations, leading UK-Brazil Olympics cooperation, coordinating with EU and Middle East peace process as Israel desk officer and in strategic resource management. Prior to joining the diplomatic services, he worked for the international development charity Oxfam and the Japanese 2020 World Cup Organizational Committee. Not going too much into details, Matt Field is well known in Bosnia. It's very hard for us to do more introduction. But what is important that he is one of the most active ambassadors in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Your Excellency, good morning to Sarajevo. How are you?
Good morning and greetings from Sarajevo. It's a lovely sunny day here.
Lovely to see you. Your Excellency, we thank you for agreeing to talk to us and participating in this online conversation. We are, as mentioned before, Bosnian Community Council is one of diaspora organization which is trying to link Bosnian politicians, diaspora in Australia and abroad. We would like to get a little bit your feeling about what is really happening in Bosnia. So how did you first, when you moved to Bosnia, how did you see Bosnia?
Sure. I think the first thing is to say I feel very lucky to be representing the UK in a country as interesting, diverse, rich in history and culture as this. I have enormously enjoyed my time here. I find people incredibly welcoming. With my family here, we spend a lot of time traveling around and seeing different parts of the country. So the kind of personal side of life here I find fantastic. At the same time, I think Bosnia and Herzegovina is one of the most challenging places actually to be doing a job like mine. And I think it's because we have such high hopes for this country, because we want to see it succeed, that it's difficult to see when the number of challenges that the country is facing. And, you know, the UK is here to, I think, help. I think we have the same objective, which is a country that is successful, stable, multi-ethnic, inclusive. But we see a number of people, particularly young people, are frankly voting with their feet. You know, they are choosing to leave. And Bosnia's great gift, I think, is its diaspora. It's people like yourselves and this huge network around the world. But what worries me is not that people are leaving in itself, but that they're feeling hopeless about the future of this country. And that, I think, makes it even more important that friends of Bosnia and Herzegovina, like the UK, do everything we can now to help it succeed.
Your Excellency, you have been in different services across Balkans and in different collaboration. So Bosnia and Herzegovina heavily relies on its friends. Can we say that the United Kingdom is a friend nation to Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Yeah, I would certainly hope. I would certainly see it that way, and I hope people in the country feel that way as well. But I think it's quite easy to say you're a friend. I think we should be judged on what we do, not just what we say. And having worked in the region before, sort of returning back after a number of years away, I'm struck that the UK is doing even more, I think, these days than it has done before. It's massively increased its programs, so the projects that we can use to support the country in its development. We're doing a lot in terms of rule of law, improving the business environment, trying to improve public services. We're doing a lot still with the armed forces. We have a large contingent taking part in EUFOR in the peacekeeping mission here. We're doing a lot in terms of trying to increase trade between our countries. Trade has generally been relatively modest with Bosnia and Herzegovina, certainly compared to some of its neighbours. But I think we can do a lot better, and we have seen it increasing over the last couple of years. But I think it's also standing up and being counted on what matters to us, which is the success of this country. And that success, I think, has to be built on what makes Bosnia and Herzegovina special, which is its inclusiveness, its mixed history, its different cultures, different religions, different groups, different communities coming together. Yes. And I think the UK has a job to do that, and that's not easy. And it's frankly, when we look at particularly why people are leaving, so why such large numbers of young people are leaving, yes, economic reasons are part of that. So people that tell us they're leaving because they want to pursue or to find a better job or better prospects for them. But I think one of the things that is particularly worrying now is that you're seeing people who have jobs leaving. So people who have good jobs here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And what they often say is that they're leaving because they want greater security for themselves and their families. And they want to live in a country that doesn't have such corruption. And they want to live in a country that has better public services, and that's the kind of stuff we can help with. But can
we come back to that topic a little bit more further? Considering what you said, there is friendship, there is need for improvement, there is space for improvement with the United Kingdom and Bosnia and Herzegovina. But one thing that came to my mind, and it's official visits from UK prime ministers. We had from what's called John Major. He came to Bosnia after, I think it was 96, visiting Bosnia just after the Dayton Agreement was signed. And then after that, we had Tony Blair, who visited Bosnia. But then after that, there was no official visits to Bosnia. For us, we know in these friendships that are growing and developing, that visits are very important, that they are symbol of strengthening the relations. And sometimes these prime ministers send messages that are important for people. Has United Kingdom government gave up on strengthening relationship with Bosnia? We know that Bosnia has an issues, but also it's important for United Kingdom to visit Bosnia. And can we expect Mr. Johnson to visit Bosnia any soon?
Sure. I think it's a good question. I think visits are part of that. I think we have increased the staff that we have on the ground, the number of projects that we have. We haven't had a prime ministerial visit for some time. What I would love to be reporting to you is what the visit that was meant to happen in March this year. So the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, was due to be coming to Bosnia and Herzegovina for quite a substantive visit to Sarajevo and to Srebrenica. And unfortunately, for reasons which you all understand, it was cancelled at about 3 days' notice. So I think that's a great shame. I think it would have sent a really clear message. That is a very senior UK visitor to be coming. But your question was about the Prime Minister. There are no immediate plans, I think, for the Prime Minister to do much travelling at all, frankly, because of everything that's going on. But he was here, actually, as Foreign Secretary 2 years ago. Yeah. So Boris Johnson has been in Bosnia and Herzegovina quite recently. He came because it's important to the UK. I would love to see more visits, yes, but frankly, at the moment, not many people in the UK government are going anywhere. And you understand that. So we've got to find some other ways of trying to increase that. What
is the current bilateral agreements between two nations? Like, can you elaborate a little bit on that one? Sure. Is there any social agreements, educational, scholarship, etc., etc.?
Sure. So we're in the process of moving over a lot of our sort of agreements which were in place with the EU. So the UK has left the EU. A lot of that actually because of the SAA that Bosnia and Herzegovina has. So it was directed. So all our trade agreements, all of those things were in place through the SAA. So we're moving those all over. New air services agreements, new transport agreements, new trade continuity agreements, which we're finalising at the moment. In terms of people to people, we have good education links. We have a very good scholarship program. Last year, I sent the largest ever group from Bosnia and Herzegovina to the UK on full scholarship programs. I'd like more, frankly. I'm ambitious to do more between them. The trade level is not what I think it should be. It was about 100 million a year. It's gone up quite significantly from that, but it's still nowhere near, I think, what it could be. What we have had.
What is the obstacle for that relation? For the
sure. So the good news is you can now get Tesco's products on shelves in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bits of Aston Martins are now being made by the Prevent Group in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have actually one of the best examples is a UK-Australian BIH link where there's a big mining project in Vareš. They're actually mining for gold in Vareš, and they have some of the best prospects in the world on gold mining, which is an Australian-UK company that is now working, and it's the best kind of investment because it's long-term, builds up the skills of local people, creates jobs. I think one of the biggest obstacles, to be totally honest, is that this is not an easy place to do business. Many of the companies find complications in the administration, the number of different levels of government that you have, the number of different bits of paper that you need to do business. So we've spent quite a lot in project money trying to reduce the red tape so that companies have a more positive experience. I have to say the diaspora is a great resource in this. And I'm not only saying that because it's I'm speaking to you guys. So we have several companies now from the UK operating here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, manufacturing, producing things which are set up originally by diaspora from Bosnia and Herzegovina and now based in the UK. So I think there's more to be done. The UK, we haven't tended to do as much as, say, the US or the Swedes with the diaspora, but me talking to you today is part of this. I think there's more we can do. And there are some very good examples of people who understand the business environment here and its complications, but can see the potential to do more.
Yes. Now, talking about diaspora, UK has Bosnian diaspora as well, and we had a headquarter of Bosnian Diaspora Union in Birmingham and London. There is a greater Bosnian Institute in London as well. So there is some very successful Bosnians in the UK, and one of them have been elected to your parliament as well. So how well have you utilized those capacities that you already have from people that speak your language, that understand the culture, both cultures, Bosnian and United Kingdom, and how well they are integrated in your, let's say, political but also diplomatic system to collaborate with Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Ernest. I think there's more we can do. I try to grab at every opportunity I can. You know, in terms of my job to promote UK-BIH relations, those individuals, people like Arminka Helic, Baroness Helic, that you mentioned in the House of Lords, people like Ivana Gavric, the world-class pianist who is originally from Sarajevo, has lived in the UK for some time. These people are perfect champions. They're better ambassadors than me for the relationship between the two. I think there's more we can and should be doing with them. But it's also about making sure that it works for them. So I mentioned about some of those investors. You know, they will come and do business here, but they won't do it as a charity. They want to be able to succeed here. And this is where I think creating a more level playing field for them and other investors, other people who want to do business here, it's incredibly important. Frankly, it's too hard to do business. It's too complicated. We can help companies navigate some of that. So what I do as the British ambassador is quite a lot of my time is supporting UK companies with or without diaspora links. A lot of them do have them because of the language, because of the understanding that you mentioned. But it often takes still a long time to do business here, to get the permits to operate, to be treated fairly in the courts. So I think making it more of a level playing field here is one of the best things that we can do. I would love to make more of some of those champions, those sort of ambassadors for the relationship. The fact is that people from this country, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, are successful everywhere they go. It's not just the UK. It's Austrian justice ministers, Swedish business people, you know, Australian footballers. You know, there are success stories everywhere. Every time we send people from the Bosnia and Herzegovina armed forces to our military academies in the UK, they come back with prizes. They're very successful individuals. The question is what more we can do to help them succeed at home as well. And I think that's the most important job that I think we have to reach that goal of the country succeeding, is reducing those obstacles at home.
Talking about successful individuals, we have Member of Parliament in Australia who is Ed Husic from Bihać originally. And we have a lot of lecturers at universities, professors teaching. And we have today with us Dr. Samra Alispahic, from Western Sydney University. She had a question for you in relations of collaboration between UK and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Samra, can you hear us?
Yes, hi. Your Excellency, thank you for your time and having a talk to us. My question is, as a researcher, I was interested to do a research project a few years ago in Bosnia, but as you mentioned, I found the red tape to be mind-boggling, to say the least. Fortunately, I was able to come across a university, the school, Sarajevo School of Science and Technology, SSST, and I went there, and they were very supportive. I spent 3 months in Sarajevo, and I visited again last year. However, for any type of research to be done in Bosnia, talking to my academic colleagues, because I was interested to find out about the research coming out from Bosnia, and they all mentioned that the government funding is pretty much non-existent. And is anything being done to alleviate those problems and to put our academics on the world map?
It's a really good question, Samla. I think your experience is not at all unique, fortunately. And many of those who are permanently based here are frustrated by that experience of red tape and administration. In many cases, I think there is funding, but it's not necessarily going to the right places. You know, there is an awful lot of money spent on the public administration and public budgets, But it is this kind of system of patronage, frankly, that the job of the system is to provide paid positions for party members. And that patronage network, if there's one thing that I could unpick, because I think it would be helpful, education sector, business, all kinds of fields, it's that unpicking of patronage and the ability of political parties to control where the money goes. Transparency is a big part of that.
Yes.
Is helping show people where their money is going. I mean, this is a bit more of a sort of an observation, but something that I hear from people like yourself, people from the diaspora, people who have had experience outside the country as well and maybe come back, is that that idea of a taxpayer is a bit missing here. If you pay taxes, you are entitled to expect something back. You have paid for public services. You have paid for the education system. You have paid for the healthcare system. And the fact that people's experience in those public services is often about corruption, actually, is that you need to pay in order to get the medical treatment that you need and are entitled to. You need to pay in order to be treated fairly in the education system. So that, I think, is time and again, it's a big driver of people leaving. So what are we doing about it? This is where I think the UK, we can provide some support, but the UK is only one actor here. The EU, it's going to sound a bit strange, the UK ambassador talking so much about the EU, but the EU is, I think, the big opportunity for driving change here. And I think there's a very good EU ambassador at the moment, Johan Sattler. There's a very good US ambassador, Eric Nelson, as well. We're very joined up on this, is that together we're trying to root out corruption, have people prosecuted, get transparency in where the money goes, and put citizens first, so that they are prioritized in this, not that it's the political parties that come first. The country is increasingly accessing Europe-wide programs, and it's not only SSST, but you mentioned them, and they are one of those that we've helped to access some of these European-wide programs, and that comes with funding as well. So there's money that comes in externally as well that is accessible. Individuals getting scholarships, individuals studying. But I'm kind of, the thing that I would most like to see is the money that exists being spent properly, not necessarily about money coming in from the outside.
Well, that's exactly my point.
And quite a cool thing. Yeah. Sorry, Sam.
No, sorry, please. That's exactly my point, because in addition to the outside resources that we may have available to Bosnia now, it would be lovely to see it being education and research being recognized from a government level of a country. Yeah, we agree on that. And then going to the healthcare that you touched upon, the UK is one of the world leaders in autism and disability research. Unfortunately, the Bosnian and region in Balkan regions are not. I have also found that quite often these groups are very much overlooked. Access to early diagnosis and intervention and lifelong therapies as well is almost non-existent. And the support that needs to go into that would need to be led from an outside, unfortunately, source due to potentially the lack of knowledge, experience, and in that, to that extent, is that something that the embassy has looked at for these particular groups of people?
Yeah, again, another really good question. Again, I'm glad you said the UK. This is something that the UK has dealt with. I don't think it's perfect in the UK by any means. And you know, the challenges that our healthcare system is under at the moment, but it is something I think that people take seriously. Special needs education, autism, and other kind of challenges. This reminds me very much of an issue that came up here, gosh, I think it was last year now, where footage came out from inside one of the children's homes here in Sarajevo. And the footage was horrendous. I mean, it was absolutely incredible that children were being treated that way. Now, what I like to find the positive in that, the good news is I think that this was, this was found by people, citizens here. It was published by citizens here, and the response came from citizens here. So as much as I fully supported that and was on board with everything that they were doing, this was very much locally owned to change the way that that home was being run. We also work very closely with an international charity called Hope and Homes for Children, which looks at moving all kids, not only those with special needs, but all kids out of institutions and into families. So we've done some things on this. We've managed to get some of the kids out of some of those institutions, but it's not enough. And I think your point about friends or those who care about these issues, outsiders trying to help it's a local issue and it's locally owned and people care about here, but it's just giving them a bit more of a voice and a bit more of an opportunity and a bit more of a platform. Yeah. Again, I think this is about trying to use that EU process, the international standards, to increase the way that this is being dealt with here. There's still a long way to go. You mentioned about autism, lots of other issues around disability, lots of other issues around yes. how people are treated. Quite a lot still to be done, I think, in all those areas.
Right. And to go back to you mentioning the business aspect in Bosnia, I'm wondering how has COVID affected business in Bosnia? I've heard a statistic that almost 2 trillion has been lost this year.
Yeah, I think the numbers are scary. This is not a country that had fantastic levels of growth in the first place. So to be taking a big step backwards, that is really worrying here. We've seen that, to be clear, all across the country, both entities, all the cantons as well, they're all suffering. There have been some good decisions, I think, with a bit of external encouragement about trying to protect jobs, protect salaries, trying to make sure some support network was in place. The UK argued very strongly for some of the international money to be made available. So the IMF, 350 million, the EU is another 250 million euros. But one of the main things that I get, sort of comments I get back when we talk about that is, yeah, but where's the money going? Yeah. Because if that money only goes into the pockets of the same kind of elite, well, what's the point? So making sure there's transparency about all of that money that comes in. Where's it going? What's it being spent on? Frankly, I think the international money, we have quite a lot of confidence about where that goes. The loans, the grants, because that's the requirement of getting it. Right. What we have less control over, less sight over, is the domestic budgets. And I think I would love to see a bit more transparency. We've worked very hard to try to get it. We'll continue to argue for it with the EU and others. More transparency about where people's money is going. You see a bit of this when people respond, for example, well, why are we spending all of that money on new cars for ministers? Maybe that's not the priority. Why are we spending money in that area instead of this area? This is quite normal, I think, in the UK, quite normal in Australia as well. Debate about where public money goes. Exactly. I'd like more of that. And if because COVID is yes, it's a healthcare crisis. The numbers in Bosnia and Herzegovina, frankly, are quite scary. But the economic impact is the one that's really going to last. And so taking better decisions. And then just the last thing on this, bit of a pet subject for me, but those cuts are not affecting everyone equally. They are disproportionately affecting women. They're disproportionately affecting people who young people as well. So if those decisions are not only reducing the overall amount of money, but making it particularly worse for some groups, then there's an even more of a problem that they're creating. So again, we keep working on this. We'll keep arguing for more transparency about all of it.
I recently spoke to a few of my friends who have started the first e-commerce website in the Balkans, or in Bosnia, but also the Balkans, called Orea Bazar. and they do a lot. Yeah, so they do a lot in regards to helping bring online shopping to the region, but also for us from the diaspora to order directly from our handicraftsmen and to keep people in jobs. And rather than, as you mentioned previously, look at it as a charitable venture, actually give people real jobs and continued ecosystem support. But what I found really inspiring is as well that they actually help the local charities like women shelters and children with cancer. But going back to the aspect of e-commerce in Bosnia, I have found that their challenges within the region have been to inspire people to do online shopping. Is that something that Bosnia should invest more into, seeing that COVID is here to stick around?
Absolutely. So when I'm kind of looking around for success stories, because I think part of my job is yes, I mean, is to see the challenges, but is also to identify those success stories and show where people are able to succeed here, and look at why they succeed. The easiest place to find success stories here is the IT sector, because you have actually world-class IT startups coming out of this country, because there's a lot of talent locally, there are low costs, and you can operate internationally without necessarily being bound up in some of those red tape issues that we've talked about. So there's absolutely success stories. Oria Bazaar is one of those. You know, I've been along to support some of the physical events that they've held as well. They do great stuff online. But there are some practical things that you can do to help that. E-signature is one of those things, you know, where we've spent literally years trying to get this legislation fixed so that it's easier to do business online. Government services, so you don't have to physically, I mean, anyone who's been here will know that experience of physically going in with pieces of paper to get stamps and signatures on. So much of that can be done online. Making it digital by default is the kind of UK government mantra. So trying to get more of those. Often that doesn't need much of a change in terms of the law. Sometimes it does, and it's incredibly hard work, but we do get some of those things through. And then getting more of that. So what you actually need in most cases from the government is not even necessarily much investment. You just need them to get out of the way. Yes. So don't create an obstacle. That's what we're asking for. And that's why I think some of those success stories there. The other bit that kind of links to this somehow for me is about, so what should Bosnia and Herzegovina ideally be known for? Okay, not looking backwards, but what kind of sectors for the economy should it be known for? I think the IT is a big one, because of this pool of talent, because of operating internationally, because of relatively low cost. I think ecotourism is the other one as well. So not necessarily mass tourism, but actually adventure sports, outdoor, untouched, unspoiled. You know, these are big opportunities here. Skiing, winter sports, it's improving as a destination. Should be doing that all year round. The mountains, the lakes, all of that. That's what the country should be known for. And again, it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily require a lot of investment to get out of the way. One of the things I think would help though for all of this, better roads, and this is such slow progress. You know, I make the drive to go to Split quite often because that's where my wife is from, and at times until very recently, the most direct route there, that road is unpaved in places. Forget highway, it's unpaved in places. So that's quite a basic requirement if you want the country to succeed for any of those things. Improve the infrastructure, and it will get better, I think.
Yeah. And just one final question before we hand over to Safet. I recently saw a tweet of yours about why most top foreign office posts are held by women. But we unfortunately face a dilemma again in Bosnia that where women, I think, make up more than half the population, but the Ombudsman released some data this year from 2013 to 2019 that shows in the top tier of employment, only 1/4 of positions are made up of females. And also for the elections coming up, only 3 female mayors are currently running in Sarajevo. I am looking at it from an outside perspective. They do face a lot of opposition, a lot of stereotypes, a lot of attacks online. And whenever I'm at a meeting in Sarajevo, it is mostly made up of men. And I would like to see more females being engaged in leadership roles. In your opinion, how can we change that and include more females, not just in politics, but in higher positions as well?
Yeah, no, I think it's really good. Another really good question. And I think, you know, a challenge that a lot of people here are interested in. So what can we do to increase the representation of women in politics here? Not only because it's the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do as well. And you get better politics as a result. I mean, you know, the parliament here is not representative of the population. Of the 140 odd municipalities, I think 7 of them were headed by women last time. So it's about trying to increase that representation. I do understand why many women hesitate, because the way that I've seen politics work here is often incredibly hostile towards women. And that is the online experience of many women. Over the weekend, I saw a number of attacks sort of directed at one politician in particular.
Yes.
And, you know, her experience is not unusual. We've done some work with Westminster Foundation for Democracy on this, on what it's like to be a woman in public life here, whether you're a journalist or a politician or in some other area. And it's pretty incredible the amount of abuse that is considered fair game here. So I think calling out that abuse for what it is, and that's something I can do personally, and support the Ombudsman and other people like that. This is not normal, that someone who runs for office receives horrendous threats, abuse about her appearance, about her family, all these kinds of things. And it's one thing the research showed is that it wasn't about a particular party or a particular ethnic group.
No, it was across the board.
Yeah, exactly.
Across the board. Out of 15,000 across the board, Federation RS Brčko district, 25% were female, 75 point something were male.
Yeah. So, and I think, you know, you've seen some efforts like quotas about the number of female candidates on lists, but often those female candidates occupy positions which make sure that they don't get the job. So working with individual parties, as we have done, making clear, being vocal going in the run-up to the election about the importance of representation and also the unacceptability of those attacks. But it's also women in other areas of life. And I'm glad you mentioned about other leadership. So in business, in cultural life, you know, there are good examples, I think, and celebrating those successes. So yes. Women in business, someone like the director of the Sarajevo Philharmonic, you know, women in so cultural, business, political life, in journalism as well. But as long as they're subjected to this disproportionate amount of abuse, then it's going to be much harder to fix that. Again, though, this is not a unique problem here. It is absolutely a problem for us in the UK at home. It's a problem in other parts of this region. So none of this starts from the point of view that we have it fixed.
Well, thank you so much for answering all those questions. And over to Sandra.
Your Excellency, Sandra, thank you very much. I think having quality people is always good for good conversations. Your Excellency, just you have touched many of our questions that we already have been written to prepare ourselves. There is a little bit decline in multiculturalism in UK. However, we have also ethnic system or tribal system in a Bosnian political system where everything is separated based on ethnic keys or ethnic preferences. How can we learn from each other, and how can we improve political relations, conservatism that is both growing in UK and also in Bosnia, to prevent society to becoming more extreme, more conservative, and to offer younger people, and not only younger, as Samra said, to women and all these things, opportunities, equal opportunities to participate in the system. Before we go to this one, so we will move towards more political questions that Safet will ask next. But just this area that we need to address and need to somehow debate on institutional level: conservatism, radicalism, ethnic and tribal political system.
Yeah, I think that's a huge question, Ernest, but a very good one. I think it's, Bosnia and Herzegovina's great advantage is this diversity, is its mixture of histories, cultures, religions, that they come together in this different place. It's not a weakness, it's absolutely its greatest strength, I think. Recent history, obviously, people think of this country as being sort of divided and fractured, but I think the commonality of people living together is much longer than that recent history. The Dayton system, 25 years on, I think Dayton was a very specific agreement to end the war. That's what Richard Holbrooke's book is called, To End the War. And I think Dayton, probably no one at the time expected it to be still in place, more or less untouched 25 years later. So that complicated system of checks, balances, vetoes, keys, everything being ethnically defined, I don't think that was a permanent solution. It was a way of stopping the fighting and getting things moving forward. So there's a couple of things that throw up from that. One is, I do think that reform of the constitution is going to come at some point. Every country that joins the EU has to reform its constitution. Everyone does. And so at some point, I think there will be reforms of the constitution, and that means reforms of what was agreed at Dayton. I don't think that will happen quickly. I don't think it will happen easily. It will have to be a domestically owned process that includes people, but it will happen. And the US ambassador has made some comments on this recently, which I would also agree with on that. I think it's about including people in decision-making, decisions that affect them as well. And I'm going to come actually back to the political system here. We have elections coming up later this year. Over the last few years, participation in elections has been quite steadily dropping. So it's down to about 53% in the last elections. It's sort of steadily coming down. And I think part of the reason for that is people feel disconnected from their representatives, or they don't feel that they have options which represent what they're interested in. Participation amongst young people is particularly bad, particularly low. So I think part of this is trying to encourage people to make their voice heard in the elections, because if you don't vote, then you can guarantee that you are not taken seriously or listened to by politicians. If you do vote in significant numbers, I think you have a much stronger voice. You will be better represented. And I think there are there are options for people to vote. We've seen that at the local level, parties coming in which are more citizen focused, which are more interested in improving people's lives. I think that's how you sort of tackle this sort of disconnect from people from their representatives. The point about that sort of ethnically divided system is, instead of fighting over the share of the pie, the objective should be to increase the size. So we're growing the economy, more opportunities for people, more in the private sector particularly. So it's not only about trying desperately to join a political party and get a job in public administration. That's the objective. That's what we're trying to do. I think we have some partners here, but none of this is easy.
Yes, it looks like a desperate situation. And what I miss in Bosnia, and we have probably in Australia and in the UK, is that our representatives sit in their local offices, in their suburbs, electorates, while in Bosnia you have people sitting in Sarajevo, in Banja Luka, and other parts. There is no access to politicians that are really elected and should represent, and that they can collect wisdom and ideas and concerns of the local citizens. It's very hard to communicate, and unfortunately we did try to write them emails from diaspora, and many of them they don't even answer, which is a norm.
But I mean, on that, Ernest, I think that's a very fair point. This is why the local elections this year are so important. Yeah, so local elections particularly, and frankly, these are the politicians often that make me optimistic. So I can think of a number of politicians at the local level across the country, from different parties, different ethnic groups, all across, who are doing great work because they are linked into their communities and they're doing what's in the best interest of their communities, attracting investment, improving public services. We did see a bit of this at the cantonal level as well. I know it's complicated, messy system here, but there is maybe more of a connection. And I think if politicians are willing to listen, then people will bother to speak up. That's the connection that I'd love to see strengthened.
Thank you very much. We do read your blog. We have read your articles, all articles that you have written. One of those particular articles that is today, I'll just move to Safet. It's Pedi Ajdan. He's seen as a friend. He's seen as a very effective high representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina. May his soul rest in peace. He has been a pillar of political changes and influences in Bosnia. We miss that influence. We miss that support by higher representative. But before we go in that one, Safet, can you hear us, Safet?
Yes.
Okay, ready to go.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And yeah, I did listen conversation, and I know the Bosnian people have a big responsibility for their country. But if we go back to Dayton Peace Agreement, one of the guarantor was your country, UK. And today, what we're listening from East and West, our neighbors, they talking, they are guarantors. And I like to hear from you, please, how you see the Serbia and Croatia in Dayton Peace Agreement, and how can they say they are guarantors? Is they part of the conflict in Bosnia, or they are guarantors?
Sure. And forgive me, Safet, I don't have a huge amount more time. I do have to leave at 11. I think it's another good question. My understanding, and I think it's reflected by the UK government, is that those two countries are signatories of Dayton. They were participants within the conflict, and the peace agreement has those signatures, including on the side of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So rather than guarantors, I would say signatories. And that is the basis on which those relations are defined. The UK supports Dayton, as it has done for 25 years, is a member of the Peace Implementation Council, and will continue to protect and defend the order of this constitutional order of this country, but that also has a regional angle to it. And what happens in Zagreb and Belgrade is very relevant here. So I think one of the most important things for Bosnia and Herzegovina is that there is good communication and good relations and positive, constructive relationships with Belgrade and with Zagreb, because that has a big impact here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Okay,
in context with this, how you comment denying genocide, which occurred in Srebrenica 25 years ago, and also member of the collective presidency They say that Bosnia doesn't exist. They will separate part of the Bosnia. And in this context, I'm asking you because you mentioned that people leaving Bosnia, even which working, I think they're not feeling security. They're not secure. If someone telling you your country doesn't exist, we will separate, we will make what we want. And no one doesn't stopping them. Like US has sanctions of the Mr. Dodik. What is that with UK?
So on sanctions specifically, the UK until the end of this year is part of the EU sanctions regime for this country. And the EU sanctions regime requires everyone to agree. And there has not been agreement on sanctions. After this year, UK leaving the EU, the UK will have an independent sanctions policy, and then things might look different, but that's for next year onwards. The point about those sort of domestic actors who are arguing against the existence of the state, we'll continue to stand up to them on each and every occasion. We are very clear. We support the sovereignty and integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We also are very clear on the facts about what happened in Srebrenica 25 years ago. I participated personally in the commemoration in July. The Prince of Wales, Prime Minister Johnson both sent very personal messages, very explicit that this was genocide. And we respect the decisions of the international courts that confirm that. So we'll continue to be very clear, stand up for that everywhere. UN Security Council, Peace Implementation Council, everywhere we are, the UK remains extremely clear on that. So we will stand up to those that call for the end of this country or somehow secession or those things. But also, I think this is important as well, that we should not allow ourselves to be distracted from the real challenges that face people in this country today about the economy, about the rule of law, about corruption, about public services. That's also where I want us to continue to be focused, because sometimes this talk about the past or the existence of the state or the history is a deliberate attempt to take attention away from failure to deliver jobs, opportunity, public services. So we need to be able to do both.
I agree, but you know they have veto. They can say we not agree. Our nation we not agree. And in context with that, you mentioned the U.S. ambassador, Mr. Nelson, mentioned recently about Dayton Peace Agreement need maybe reforms. How strong? You mentioned in your previous, how strong, and I think we need soon as this possible, because COVID-19, they stopped that. More people to go out from the Bosnia. How they're happening in last 2 years, I don't think so they will be. How quick the UK, US, European Union, everyone who make the Dayton Peace Agreement can, I think, more support. And then we will be better in economic, in school, in everything. Is the UK 100% on this line?
Sure. So look, this will have to be the last one. Forgive me, I will have to go because I have to do another thing. But I'll also work back a little bit to Paddy Ashdown, who is, okay, for all, you know, still a great hero to many people here. And, you know, he was an extremely tough leader, but he was a fantastic champion and friend of this country. But Paddy Ashdown himself would never impose a reform that was required by the EU or NATO. So he understood that those reforms, the things that would move the country closer to the EU, move the country closer to NATO, needed to be done domestically, because that's where the responsibility lay, not only for an international, supranational authority to impose things on the country. It's very hard to reform purely by imposing things. In order to join the EU, the country will have to change its constitution. Every country joining the EU does. One of the key things, I think, and this is where the UK, US, EU, you know, will work very closely together, OSCE and other friends of the country is, I think we need to focus on functionality. What we have at the moment in many cases is dysfunctional. As you say, too many vetoes, too many individuals able to block reforms, block decisions. It's not impossible to make progress in this system, and we often do. Recently, we've managed to unblock issues around Mostar elections, and we managed to unblock some of the reforms. But too often, we see those vetoes used to block progress. So I think functionality, I don't think it's going to happen in a big bang. I think it's going to have to require us sort of fixing things step by step along the way. But I do think that that is the biggest reform that's needed to improve the functionality of decision-making so that people can be better represented in those decisions that are taken on their behalf. And I think, frankly, that has, in trying to impose things, is letting local politicians off the hook, because it means they don't have to do their jobs. But it's that objective to have in mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your time. Now, just to finish with some sweet things, couple of sweet things. I have heard that you love playing musical instruments around the embassy. People are talking there that it's often bass guitar that you're playing and annoying them. But I want to move a little bit to our topics. Obviously, we can continue more conversations with you in the future, hopefully about these topics, how they are progressing. I would like to ask you, where do you like to eat kebab in Sarajevo?
Dangerous question. I'd probably go Željo 2, maybe. But that doesn't mean I support one of the football clubs. I'm not saying anything about which football club I might support.
The next question, football, rugby, cricket, which FC?
At home, it's, I've tried to explain to people here, it's Oxford United for me back home. So that's my football team. I don't know what the equivalent here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, someone playing in the lower leagues. One thing I do love actually is Čelik, the rugby club in Zenica. So I spent a few trips over there and took some of the Scottish internationals to go and train with them. It's an amazing club, and I think shows the kind of talent that you have here. But I know football is the main game, and I haven't found anyone to play cricket with yet.
The Rock or Sevda?
I'll play Rock, but the embassy band, the last time we played, Amira Medunanin came up on stage with us and sang some songs. So we have Sevdak and Rock together.
Yep. Again, we have learned that you love traveling around Bosnia and visiting places. Have you visited the Pyramid of Sun and the Bobovac?
I'm going to lose some friends now. I haven't, because it's not a pyramid. Sorry, not a pyramid.
We have that concern. You know that there is a place called Bobovac. It's a place that the Bosnian king was crowned.
Yes.
We're inviting you, and hopefully once borders are opened, that we can visit it together, because it's beginning of Bosnian statehood, what we call. But Bobovac is something that we also use on our Facebook page to show that the country is important. Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time, and thank you to all our partners, our friends, and our representatives in Sydney, and everyone who was watching on our social platform. We have more questions, obviously, to ask, but we will try to keep them for the future. And we wish you good luck in Bosnia, especially when you're dealing with politics that is already established today. Hopefully, we seek support from UK. We seek support from embassies. We are very worried about Bosnia. We want to have more firm decisions once it comes to political system, and more support for High Representative. I'll conclude with that one. So it's 7 o'clock in Sydney, it's 11 o'clock in Sarajevo, and further. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone who was watching online.
Thank you so much, Ernest, and all of you. This has been great. This is exactly why I think we have to find better ways, frankly, to tap into the diaspora. Bosnia and Herzegovina has, I think, the highest proportion of people born in that country but living somewhere else. And that's an advantage. You know, that's something that we have to try to tap into. So I'm all ears if people have more ideas on that. Please do. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram,
Yes.
and do feed into me. You know, we're looking for ideas as to how we can do this better. So I look forward to hearing from all.
We can advertise you. So Matt Field UK on Twitter. Join him and follow him from there. That's how we started our conversation. And thank you again. Thank you very much to your staff at Embassy and everyone else participating in the program.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Really enjoyed that. Take good care.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye-bye.